One of the things I love doing is filming secret TBR videos. Welcome back to my channel. So I have found a way to let me have more secret TBR videos with less control. What I'm going to be doing is a series of secret TBR videos, I don't know how many, where I'm basically going to be finding some type of Goodreads recommends. If you don't know, when you go on Goodreads, if you type in a book, on the side there are some recommendations of books that other people also enjoyed, and for the most part they're trash. I'm not gonna lie. I have found some really good books that way, but I've also found some books I really don't like that way. I have picked 6 books off of my shelf and I am going to look at some Goodreads recommends options. I'm going to be finding 5 books. So I picked 6 so that I can have 1 free pass, but the other 5 I have to find something on their Goodreads recommends, read it and review it and talk to you about it. This is my pile. I picked up Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward, The Winter's Promise by Kristen, what's her name? Christelle Dabos. I picked up The Shadows What Were Lost by James Islington, The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie, and Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. And that, my dudes, is what I think we're gonna start with because I freaking love this book and I wanna read more books like it. So my computer crashed, which means I lost all of that footage. I'm a little upset, not gonna lie. Okay, so that was like really confusing. I definitely need to figure out a way to make this process a little bit easier in the future, but I officially have all of it figured out. So for Warbreaker, I have chosen to read The Blade itself, which I do own, but I own the audiobook, so I can't hold it up for you all. For Legacy of Ash, so for this, I'm going to be reading Kingdom of Liars. For The Shadows of What Were Lost, I'm looking at the list because this is a very confusing video to film. I am going to be reading Malice, which I also own and is in my bedroom, and I just don't feel like going and getting. For A Winter's Promise, I'm going to be reading Ascension, which looks like it's going to be trashy YA sci-fi, and I'm kind of there for it. That leaves me with The Queen of the Tearling and The Raven Tower, which is upside down. And these are both dark covers with gold on them, and I think that's really interesting. The Queen of the Tearling gave me The City of Brass, which I have attempted to read twice, but I think I just didn't give it enough time, so I really want to pick it up and try it again, and it's something I've always wanted to return to when I'm in the right mood, and I think I might be in the right mood. The Raven Tower gave me Empress of Forever, which is a book I've had my eye on for a long time, but I do not own, and I know my library doesn't have it, so I'd have to buy it, and I'm trying not to buy a ton of books right now. So I think my 5th and final book is going to be City of Brass. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm doing it again. Okay, so the literal weirdest thing happened to me today, guys. I decided to pick up City of Brass, which is the first book that I am reading for this video, and I had it from my library and I was really excited to get to it. A little bit nervous because, as I have said in the past, I have picked this book up. Shut up. I have picked this book up twice now and put it down both times just because I really couldn't get into it completely. This will be my 3rd attempt to pick up The City of Brass, and I decided to pick it up today on my lunch break, and something weird happened where I brought lunch with me, but it ended up not being good, so I went out to eat. So I was already a little bit anxious because my plans had gone astray, and then when I got to the place where I was gonna eat, it took 45 minutes to get my food to me. So I have an hour lunch and 45 minutes had already been wasted, and I tried to listen to this book for little bits, like on headphones, while I was waiting for my food to show up. And because I was already so anxious about my food not being good, and then from waiting for so long, my anxiety basically said, you can't listen to this. You physically can't listen to this. And I saw that people after me were waiting to have the book, so I returned it to the library. I'm not gonna call that an actual attempt, a 3rd attempt. I maybe made it 10 minutes into the book, maybe, if that. I'm waiting. I have about a 2-week hold now until it's supposed to come back to me, but I'm sure it'll come back much quicker, and I'm gonna give it an honest to God shot. In case you're watching this with no idea of what The City of Brass is, I am following these 2 characters. Where I'm at, one of them, I can't remember her name right now. I wonder if it'll tell me in the description. Nahiri is swindler, I guess is the word. I can't think of it. The con woman. And so she works fake magic to try to appease people and get paid for it. And then she accidentally really calls a djinn one day. And I'm at the part where she is like on the road with this djinn and they are headed towards the city of brass. And I have met the other dude whose name I really cannot remember, and I don't think he is in this description at all. Anyways, there's this dude who's like basically sparking a rebellion in the city of brass as well. We're about to make a few updates from the same location because I 100% didn't forget about the books that I had to read for this video and read them and forgot to update you. This is definitely not what happened. Let's talk about the city of brass. I did officially decide to not continue with City of Brass after I got the copy from my library. I am so busy right now that I don't have time to put forward into a book that I'm not absolutely loving. It's a DNF for me, and that's just what it's gonna be, and I'm sorry. I hate that feeling. So I want to talk about, this book was compared to The Queen of the Tearling, which I have. These are the two books that were supposed to be compared to each other. And I see some similarities. They're both like slower books. They're both about this like girl who is coming up into power, who is like a badass and is a strong female lead. But beyond that, I don't really see any similarities between these two books. This is strike one against Goodreads recommending me things. And I think that's gonna be a common theme that we're about to see. Next up, I have started and finished Kingdom of Liars, read it for my book club, and I thought that I was doing a different book for this video, which is why I suggested it to my book club. And then I found out, no, Amanda, this is the book you were supposed to be reading for this video. I accidentally finished it, and then like the next day after I finished it, I was looking through my notes and I saw that I was supposed to be reading it for this video, and I was like, shit. This book is the story of Michael, and his father was killed 10 years ago at the start of the book because his father killed the prince who was next in line to become king. Now, Michael and his siblings have been branded as traitors, and they are forced to live their lives as best as possible in this land with everyone knowing that their father killed the next king. This world has some interesting magic in it. First off, the moon, there are two of them, and one of them is like broken apart and is falling to earth and is causing problems. Second, not every person in this world has magic, but the people who do have magic all have like, it's called a fabrication, and so they're able to use magic around a certain thing. Like you can control shadows, or you can control light, or you can control water, right? A very specific thing. Dark fabricators, people who can control shadows, have the ability to erase and alter other people's minds. But also in this world, people who have fabrications, have magic, and use it, but are untrained, lose their memory. So you need to be trained in order to use your magic so that you don't lose all of your memories. And some of the memories are like how to function memories. There's a character that you meet about halfway through who used their fabrication when they were young and lost the ability to see. They forgot how to see. So I really enjoyed this book. I felt like it was definitely debut-y. It is a debut novel. It is the author's first book, but I felt like I was having a genuinely good time reading it. I ended up rating it a 3 out of 5 because the writing, specifically with the dialogue, just wasn't like high class, but everything else about it, I just really was pushed through this book. I felt myself like wanting to read more, wanting to keep going, wanting to see how it was going to end. Michael was such an idiot, and I had so much fun reading from his perspective and watching him just be the dumbest person alive that I'm really glad I picked it up. Now, this book I picked up because it was compared to, one second, Legacy of Ash. So these two books are comparing, and I don't see it. Once again, I don't see any comparison between these two books. I loved Legacy of Ash. Now, these are both debut novels written by white men about epic fantasy worlds. Although I would say that this is more of an epic high fantasy and this is more of just a high adult fantasy. So I wouldn't necessarily call Kingdom of Liars an epic fantasy myself, but some might. So beyond that, I don't see much connection between the two books at all. Next up, I have made a dent into Malice, so I am officially at page 475. I'm actually thinking I might try to finish this up today because I'm listening to the audiobook while I'm designing stuff, and I have a design heavy day, which means that I will be getting to listen to my audiobook much more than when it's not a design heavy day, and I have less than 3 hours left on the audio. So this book is the story of starting to be these signs that are appearing that are making people think that Gods are coming back, war is going to be happening, and it's not going to be good. Now, we are following a lot of POVs. This is definitely an epic fantasy novel. Like, I was questioning this one. No, this is an epic high fantasy novel, but our main character, I would say, is Corbin. So he is a young boy who grew up kind of in this farm village, who also has been practicing his swordcraft for a while, and I think the story is eventually going to lead to him being the hero in later books, but right now where we're at, he's just kind of learning and figuring things out and dealing with like bullies in his town and trying to raise his pet wolf and doing his thing. We are also following a few other characters, like we're following Corbin's sister as she is like trying to make a name for herself. I love her. She's such a badass female character. We're also following this character named Veridus, who is the like right-hand man to the prince of the realm, Nether. Now, Nether is going against his father and starting to do some things to help prepare for this war that he thinks is coming. He thinks his father is a little bit backwards and is kind of taking things into his own hands. Now, Veridus is really the character we're following, and we're watching Nether through Veridus's eyes, and Veridus is kind of this like soldier who's there to protect him from anything. So there's a lot more going on in this book, and there's a lot more POVs that are happening, but those are the main ones, and those are the ones I'm interested in. I'm really digging this book, but I definitely think there are way too many characters in this book. I went online to get a character glossary because there isn't one at the back of the book like there should be, and I found a Reddit post where someone was complaining about the fact that this book has 70 characters introduced in the first, was it 50 pages, I think they said? I'm not totally sure what number it was, but basically in the first like 10% of the book. 70 characters! I'm having a really hard time keeping everyone straight and figuring things out. There are characters on the back of this book that I'm not sure who they are in the story, and I am, like I said, 475 pages into this book. So this book was compared to The Shadow of What Was Lost. I would not make that comparison either. This is definitely like an epic high adult fantasy, and this is like a high journey, so there is some epicness to it because we do like journey through this land and see lots of different places, see lots of different POVs, but I don't really think of it as an epic fantasy that often, although it is. But this one is following much more of like a coming of age story, whereas this is like civilization on the brink of war story. But you know what I would compare? I would say that if you liked Malice, you should definitely read Legacy of Ash. It's later that same day, and I have officially finished Malice by John Gwynne. I definitely wish I had better understood who these characters were and what their motivations were and what they were trying to do, because it really did affect the ending of the story. There were lots of twists and turns and a lot of reveals about who characters were, about what characters' motivations were, about characters switching sides, and I just was like, cool, I'm here for the ride. Not necessarily what I wanted to be doing. I really enjoyed the book. It's just a matter of there's too much. One thing I really love about Stormlight, and what I also love about Song of what's the rest of the series called? The Game of Thrones series, is that while there are a lot of characters and while it is a huge epic series, the authors did a really good job of helping you understand who every single person was. You're never confused about who's talking, what their motivations are, or what they're doing, and yet you're still shocked and surprised by things and actions that characters take and twists and turns. I have a hard time with books where I have to put in like way too much effort in order to understand things. Like if I had been willing to make a whole character chart and family trees and everything like that, I want to just have the book and that's it. I enjoyed it. I ended up rating it a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I stand by what I said earlier about I don't think it totally matches The Shadows of What Was Lost, but I do understand a slight bit about the Corbin coming of age story and how it ended, how it would be kind of connected to the other one. I'll give it like half a point. Hi, it's been a while since I've talked to you. I mean, for you, it's been like 10 seconds, but for me, it's basically Christmas time already. So I've started the next book for this challenge, which is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I am listening to this book, and it's been a ride so far. I'm about 15% through the audio at the moment, and I actually started it 2 days ago, and I listened to the first 2 chapters, and I was not feeling it. I was honest to God, like, I'm gonna DNF this book. I don't care about this book. I don't like this book. I am not wanting to read this book. And so I put it down, I picked up something else for a few days, and then I came back to it today. Now I've listened to over 2 hours of it and I'm really enjoying it. First off, this book is compared to Warbreaker on Goodreads. I so far don't see any comparison besides the fact that they're both fantasy. If I had to compare this to anything else, Game of Thrones. Instant Game of Thrones comparison. So the story so far, I'm following 3 POVs. I'm not totally sure how they're connected. I'm not totally sure what the plot is going to be. I'm not totally sure where we're going with this book, but we're following a guy named Logan. He has 9 fingers. He got thrown off a cliff basically at the beginning of the book and now is wandering the wilderness. He has a cooking pot with him. It's about all I know. And then we're following this other guy who has been like tortured and taken apart and is now a torturer who takes people apart. Don't know his name. We're following this third guy. Oh, what was his name? I just like repeated it to myself on loop so that I would be able to say Jericel? It's something like that. I don't totally remember. He reminds me so much of, what's the guy's name? Greyjoy from Game of Thrones. Theon Greyjoy. Oh my God. Which, if you don't know, because I don't actually talk about this on my channel at all. I haven't talked about this since the beginning of my channel. Theon Greyjoy is my least favorite character that I've ever read. I hate that man so much. I hate him more than anyone I've ever hated before. I don't care what George is going to do with his character to make him like redeemed, because I know that in like the 5th book that he is like kind of redeemed, and I'm pretty sure that in Winds of Winter he's going to be redeemed more. I don't care. I'm going to hate him forever. I don't care what Ramsay does to him to make me fall in love with Theon. I will hate Theon until the day I die. Saying that, this guy reminds me a little bit of that because he's rich, he's spoiled, his father has spoiled him. He's basically going to be doing some type of trial where he is studying the sword to go and do this trial. It kind of sounds like he's going to be dueling, some type of competition thing. He likes to have sex with women. He literally said the words where he liked to look at peasant women so he could take advantage of them, and he liked to look at rich women so that he could see who one day he might marry. He likes to take from poor people. He likes to take money, take advantage of them, take their lives, whatever the hell he wants to do. And he likes to freaking just care about himself. He said the words, he didn't think that he should waste his time with ugly people, which, boy. But I want to say, while I hate Theon Greyjoy, I hate him so much. If I were ever given the opportunity to stab him, I would take it. I don't necessarily feel the same way about this guy because Theon, I felt disgusted, and with this character, I feel very, very much so like I'm laughing at him because I know that something bad is going to be happening to this dude. I don't know what. I have no proof yet. But I know that he's going to be going through a redemption arc. And I know that Theon is going through a redemption arc because I just said it, but I don't care about that bitch. I don't know. He amuses me. There's something like slightly different about the way he's written or how his character is going down that like I'm amused by his storyline and I can't really explain it. So I've just finished The Blade itself. It's not on my phone anymore. I don't know why I'm showing that. I read that book because Goodreads told me that it was similar to Warbreaker. I disagree. I really disagree. In fact, if I had to compare it to any 2-book series or any 2 books in particular, the whole entire story of The Blade itself is a band of people slowly coming together to prepare for a war, which, if you have ever heard that plot before, it was probably one of these 2 books. Also, it weirdly enough reminded me of the Chronicles of Narnia, which is one of my all-time favorites. Loved it. First off, I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic, and I was pretty sure through most of the book that it was going to be a 5 out of 5 since the last time I talked to you. Because I think last time when I talked to you, I was a little bit waffling with like a 4 star, but pretty shortly after that, I have been convinced. It was so enjoyable. Yeah, there were things that could be improved, but I still give 5 stars to books that aren't absolutely perfect because this book was fantastic. So like I said, this story is about a group of people kind of slowly coming together on the brink of war, and they're preparing to go on this journey together, and they're preparing to stop this war from coming. And what's really interesting is you actually don't know what I just said until one of the last chapters. I think it was like the second or third to last chapter. The entire book, you're watching all of these different people from across this land slowly come together or slowly do their own thing. And maybe a few of them will like hook up together, and then like you're still confused by these people over here. You're just really not sure how all these different stories are going to connect. And yet I don't feel like I've spoiled anything by telling you guys that these characters do connect at some point and that they're going to be doing something together, because this book really kind of felt like a prologue, much like these two did. While they are complete stories and they are really good, The Blade itself definitely suffered from feeling like a prologue, and yet it also felt like a sequel. It's just amazing to me that Joe Abercrombie could write these stories where it feels like these characters have been alive lifetimes and have been doing their own things. Like Logan, and I'll get into character specifics, who they are in a second, but Logan felt like he had already had an entire trilogy written about him, and I felt like I was missing out on so much because I didn't know who this man was. But he doesn't. This is his story. This is where he starts out. And yet it felt like it was all leading up into something to happen in the future sometime soon. It was fantastic. So we are following a band of characters, and the thing that really stood out to me about this book as being fantastic was the characters were amazing. They were diverse, they were interesting, they were so different from each other. They were awful human beings. Let me just say that right now. They thought and did awful things, and not just in a like, oh, I'm gonna go kill people, but like in a, oh, women aren't as powerful as men kind of a way, right? But it's so obvious from the beginning that Joe Abercrombie doesn't feel that way, and that he's writing his characters to develop and to change and to be bested one day. So we're following lots of different people, and last time I talked to you, we had met 3 POVs, and I didn't really know much about any of them. By the end of the story, I think you follow 6, and I know lots more about them. So first up you have Logan, who I guess is kind of our main character because he is the first character that we're introduced to. He's a Northman, he's a warrior, he has 9 fingers because he lost, I think it was one of his middle fingers in battle, and he is at the very beginning of the book separated from his entire clan, and he believes that they are all dead, and he is trying to figure out kind of what to do with his life next. We're also following Proctor. What's his name? Proctor's his title, and I always forget his name, but he's the one who was tortured and is now being a torturer, and it's kind of his journey of growing in power. And then we're also following, why do I forget everyone's names all of a sudden? Giselle. We're following Giselle, who is like a nobleman's son, and he is learning how to fence, and he's going to use that to try to win this competition and eventually hopefully get a title in the army so that he can lead men, and eventually after that grow in power. He is very power hungry. He is very much so lazy, power hungry. It's like such a good combination. He's the one that I was screaming about last time we talked. We also get to see some of Captain, or is it Major West's perspective, which is just Giselle's next commanding officer. And Captain West has a sister named Artie that Giselle is really interested in, and she has something up her sleeve. At the end of the book, I still don't know what she is up to, but I know she's up to something, and I can't wait to figure out what, because she is so sneaky, and she seems to be connected to all of the different characters the most. But we only get to see her brother's perspective, not hers. I don't think we ever got to see hers, to be honest. And it was really, really great how Joe Abercrombie handled it, because the entire time you're kind of comparing these 2 soldier type characters, and you're looking at West as this amazing like savior like person, and you're looking at Giselle as this awful human being. And then Joe Abercrombie, he doesn't make them switch positions, he doesn't make them any different, and yet somehow realize something horrible. We also get Farah, who is my favorite character ever. Oh my god, I freaking love her. Oh, you don't get her until part 2, so I will say, like, stick it out. But she's an archer, she's out for blood, she's out for vengeance, she is out there to kill people, and that's all she wants to do, and she's such a cool person. Oh my god, I love her, I am in love with her. And then you also get, really fun fact, a band of soldiers wandering through the wilderness, and if you connect the dots, you realize that it's Logan's long lost troop who isn't dead, but they think he's dead. One of the biggest compliments I can give this book personally is that it had a fight scene that I not only paid attention to, but was super into. So normally I zone out or skim read all battle or all fight scenes, which is really funny for someone who loves epic high fantasy and has read many, many great battle scenes. I just don't care about them. But in this book, there was this specific scene where Giselle was fencing in his competition, and I was so glued to the audiobook. Someone could have come up behind me and robbed me. I wouldn't have known. Even after the battle scene, the scene right after it, if you've read the book, Giselle goes and talks to the king. I want to know so much more about the king and his son and his daughter-in-law. Like, oh, they are such interesting characters. Oh my God. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Joe Abercrombie writes fantastic characters. I have quite literally never noped faster out of a book. I made it to page 170 exactly last night, and I will read to you the paragraph that made me say, can't do this anymore. But first, let's talk about kind of some more of this book. So I've mentioned in the past, it's kind of like a it's kind of like a reality TV show dating, but they're up in space, and eventually the 6 of them are going to get married and populate Mars, right? What was really cool about this story is it had all of these diagrams throughout that helped you just understand some of the concepts. I always enjoy when sci-fi does that because I have no clue what you're trying to describe to me when you're describing it to me, and the diagrams really helped. What I didn't like about this book was I wanted it to quite literally be our main girl up in space, angst, fighting for her life, whatever. We had these intermissions where we were flipping back and forth between her and then different people on Earth. And I didn't care about any of those people on Earth. They are not what I signed up for. And so actually it got to the point where I would see a chapter by them and I would just skip it completely because I couldn't find out how it was helping the story at all. What it kind of comes down to is I was just feeling like this book was putting gender stereotypes on people that I couldn't. Also, the dialogue in this book is super awkward and super cringy and not like in a fun way. So the point that made me just nope out of it is each of our girls gets a different day basically, and they get to pick a boy, whoever they want, and they get 6 minutes to meet the boy. Now, each of our people has a skill set. So they, along with being high school age teenagers, like they're literally 17 to 20 years old, so I guess they're not in high school anymore, have these like medical and scientific backgrounds that I don't believe any of them actually had. One was like the medical doctor, one was pilot, one was engineer. Like, so one of our girls, who is known as this like very modest, very quiet, very like, she wears white button-ups and khakis, gets her first date. Right when she picks which boy she wants and he's like walking in, she immediately unbuttons her trousers, which float off behind her like a dead leaf carried by the wind, revealing legs sheathed in black fishnet stockings. Then she removes her off-white jumper. Beneath it, her shoulders are bare and she wears a sumptuous corset in embroidered black velvet, decorated with tassels that glimmer like the stars behind the bubble. She undoes the elastic holding back her hair, which spreads in a silky black banner all around her. The final touch, she takes a lipstick out of her bodice and with an expert hand applies a deep red layer to her mouth, transforming her into a femme fatale. And then when the boy sees her, he says, "Whoa." And she says, "I could say the same thing about you. Good choice." And then he says, "You're absolutely ... sublime. The other girls aren't all hot like you, right?" And then she says, "You've nothing to worry about so long as you can make it through the interview. The other girls are cute enough in their way, but that's about it. If you know what I mean. This game is a competition, and I'm not sure you're cut out for it. There's no accounting for taste, though, and I certainly wouldn't want to sound like I'm boasting." Well, you've got plenty to boast about. Who talks like this? Who talks like this. Oh my god. Anyway, so yeah, I noped out of that really quickly. Let me take you to the other girl's first day because it was just as bad as this one, if not slightly worse. So he gets up there, he says, "Thanks for inviting me." She says, "Not at all." There's an awkward moment of silence, and then she blurts out, "I chose you because I'm the girl most able to make you happy. I speak Chinese. I know how to cook Chinese food too." He says, "That's great, but you know we aren't allowed to speak any languages other than English during this program, so the viewers can follow everything we say, and I'm not sure you'll find the ingredients for Chinese food here or on Mars." And then she says, "That's merely a material detail. The most important thing isn't that I actually speak and cook Chinese. It's that I potentially speak and cook Chinese." And he goes, "I'm sorry, I don't think I understood what you mean." And she goes, "What matters is cultural proximity, isn't it? It's the cultural baggage we carry with us, everything the two of us share without needing to express it. It's statistical. It's been proven. If you'd rather put it like that, and also, I like you." This is the first time they're meeting. She's known his name. She doesn't even know what he looks like. She's known his name up until this point. He says nothing. He says nothing back to that. There's like a pause, and then she says, "We're made to be together, us two. Actually, how many kids do you want? I think 8's a good number. It's a lucky number for you Chinese, isn't it? 8, isn't that the number for prosperity?" He opens his mouth and closes it again, unfolds his arm as if embarrassed. "You have an amazing physique, if you don't mind me saying. How did you end up with muscles like that?" And he talks about his life where he used to work in a circus. And then she says, "I didn't grow up with parents either." They're talking about how they're orphans. Anyways, I DNF'd this. I'm gonna take my bookmark out. Oh, ouch. Okay, so I read 5 books for this challenge. I started out by trying again The City of Brass to compare it to The Queen of the Tearling. You know what? I'm just gonna say it right now. None of these books really fit. I didn't find any of them being accurate to the books that Goodreads was recommending them to. Maybe this won't be a new series because Goodreads clearly has no clue what's going on. So the next one on the list that I needed to read was Ascension, which, as you know, I DNF'd that one. I also DNF'd City of Brass, but that was the 3rd time I had tried that. Next up, I read Malice by John Gwynne, which I rated a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Wasn't super impressed, but didn't hate it either. Next, I read Kingdom of Liars, which I rated a 3 out of 5 stars. I will be continuing on with that sequel, even though I wasn't like amazingly impressed with it. I thought it was actually pretty decent and I enjoyed reading it, and I'm curious enough to go on to the next one. And then finally, I read The Blade itself, which I rated at 5 out of 5 stars. I will be continuing on not only with the sequel, but pretty much all other Joe Abercrombie books, and it's possibly a new favorite of all time. Like, I haven't stopped thinking about it since I finished reading it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, I don't remember how my outro goes, but I will talk to you in the comments. Bye!